All right, so shall we begin?
Yeah, sure. How are you? Where are you calling in from?
Okay, so my name is Manav, and I'm calling from Italy to you. I'm currently at IED studying transportation design.
Cool. Nice. Yeah, I know
Okay,
IED. That's cool.
all right, and I believe you have also got a degree in transportation design from CCS.
Yes, correct. Yep.
Awesome, nice to meet you.
Hmm.
Anyways, we should begin, and before we start, Mr. Jordan, would you like to introduce yourself for our audience?
Yeah, totally, sure.
All right.
Yeah, my name is Jordan Taylor. I'm the co-founder of VizCom. We use AI to help artists and designers accelerate their creative workflow with generative AI tools. And yeah, like Manav said, I studied transportation design at CCS. Used to be a car designer before starting VizCom, and yeah, so now I'm just working on that full time.
Sounds great. Looks like you've been doing really good. I've seen Viscom progress a lot over the last year.
Yeah,
If you,
yeah, it's like just the whole AI, like generative AI space in the past year or so has like very much made like these massive leaps and bounds that have been like tremendous.
awesome, because I think 1 year ago I came to know about Viscom and I started using it. But at that time, I think it was really rough. It had to
Yeah,
work on some edges. But
yeah.
right now, I'm seeing it's designing, rendering some Lego stuff as well as some I mean, really good quality products. And I believe that it's going into really right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, totally. Before we only were focused on just like coloring in people's line drawings. Like you
Mhm.
couldn't really get super high fidelity renderings just from your line drawings, but nowadays these architectures are just so different from what we were using before that you're able to get these like really nice high fidelity 3D renderings like you're talking about.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, so in this interview, we're going to talk about two things. So the first is your college life at CCS because I'm a student, and most of our audiences are also students who are aspiring to join design industry. Most
Totally.
probably, I think transportation one.
Hmm.
And the other thing we're going to talk about is Viscom itself, of course,
Of course,
because
yeah,
well, why not?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's start. And before we go to your college life, I want to talk about before you actually joined college. So how did you got into the area of transportation design or vehicle design or design in general?
Yeah,
What was
yeah, yeah,
your
yeah.
background story?
Oh yeah. Okay, so yeah, so I grew up in Michigan.
Yeah.
And in Michigan, that's where like GM, Chrysler, and Ford, like the big
Mhm.
three like American car companies are. And my high school had this like job shadowing. It was like the General Motors like it's called like You Make a Difference program. It was this thing
Mhm.
where like high schoolers could go and make a clay model and go through the whole design process. It was like after
That's
school.
nice.
Yeah. So then I did that in like 11th grade, I think, or 11th or 12th grade in high school. And then after just doing that, I was like, oh, whoa, like you can like do this for like a real job. This is real. um, but yeah, so that's what got me like into like car design. But I wasn't really good at drawing. Um, I was like more so into like photography and like graphic design because I ran like a clothing brand in high school as well, which kind of like got me into like the whole like using Photoshop and like creative tools and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of like what got me into car design, I would say.
So I would say that you have into design since I would say high school, but you got into car design because of the clay modeling workshop that held by GM.
Yeah, and like you would draw and like you would work at the studio in Warren, Michigan. They have like the
Oh,
design the it was like at the GM studio. Like you would go to General Motors in Michigan and like yeah, the tech center I think it's called or something like that. I forgot what it's exactly it was called, but yeah, it was super cool. I was like, whoa. You would like see all the stuff they're working on. You had to like put the sticker over your phone when you like go inside because you couldn't like take pictures of anything. Yeah, it was super fun.
well, that sounds great. I hope you had a good experience at the time.
Totally, totally. Yeah, and that's what I found out about CCS because like I saw people there and they're like, I was like, oh, where'd you guys go to school? And they're like, oh, we went to CCS, and I was like, whoa, what's that?
All right. Looks like it worked out great for you.
Hmm.
And I wanted to talk about, well, let's say you were in your first year or second year, maybe. I believe that you had the same experience as every other design student did. So, what kind of experience did you had in your first year? Were there a lot of sketching or a lot of projects, or where did you started it?
Yeah, first year. So a lot of it was very much like the basic fundamentals, like not even drawing cars, like no cars,
Okay,
just just like don't even draw cars, like just shapes and perspectives, like understanding how to like put objects in a
okay,
3D space was like very important. I remember at CCS, like I didn't draw a car for like a really long time. Like I had a professor, his name was Tom Rooney, and we focused on drawing like appliances, like coffee machines or like airplanes, things that are like away from a car. Because as a car designer student, I know like students are so anxious to like, oh, I gotta draw the sports car. I gotta draw a car. I gotta draw a car. But you gotta like just draw. Sometimes you have to like do that later to learn like the basics. You have to draw other things to know how to like draw a car. So that was like one thing I really appreciated about my first year at CCS is like how far away it was from the car. And then after that, I went to Korea, and then that's like a whole other story. But yeah, that's kind of like my first year was around understanding like the fundamentals of putting objects in perspective using pen and paper. Like not even Photoshop, just like pencils and paper. Yeah,
so mostly just sketching objects and sketching products, understanding how to shade,
abstract
perspectives to
shapes.
perspectives.
Yeah, like one of like the famous infamous projects at CCS is like the Speedform cable car, and it's like this
Oh,
just like speed form, and we used to build these like fifth scale model of these like abstract forms, but it's like a cable
mhm.
car, and then we would race it down the parking garage. But that in itself is like it's not really a car, but it just like gets you to kind of like break away from like wanting to draw a car so fast. So they get us to like draw these more so like abstract forms. But yeah, that's just like one example.
Was that the closest you got to ever sketching really fast cars in first year?
Yeah. That was the first. That was the closest. That was it.
And did you had any? Well, I've met a lot of designers who had this background story where they were young and they saw a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, and they got so much into it because I believe I have the same story. I
Yeah,
was really young and I had this remote control model of a Ferrari Enzo that really got me into thinking of how these kind of cars, how someone can design it or can think about it. But
yeah,
I believe you had a very different story. And
yeah.
I wanted to know, did you had a very different approach to thinking about design when you were in college compared to your other classmates?
Definitely. I know. Totally, totally. Yeah, I never really had like a major like upset like any kind of like kid like whoa like I saw like a for like because even when I got to CCS like I didn't know anything about cars. Like I didn't even know like the difference between like a V6 9000. Like I don't know like the like like all the, like the parts and stuff. I don't know like any of that stuff about like cars. Uh, but I guess like a different approach compared to my peers. So like since I don't know like I would say maybe the one thing that I realized a lot of people there's this big divide between people that are like really into the styling of cars and like how it looks
Mhm.
versus like
Yeah,
how it kind of like the story or like the function like kind of like more so like the story and like the person. And
yeah, yeah.
I was way more into the story and like how it fits into like a system kind of thing more than how it like the style thing like car designer thing like that part for me was like never so much like my strong suits like rendering and doing like hot renderings and like that kind of stuff. I was way more into like the experience you got or the feeling that these things give the person versus like the really hot styling stuff. So that's kind of where I guess I was like a little bit different in some ways versus like what was trendy at the time. Like,
Okay.
yeah,
And did you like? Well, you clearly had a different approach. I think your design philosophy might have been function over form. I think.
not necessarily function over form, but like the story, like the why. Like
Oh,
why does this need to exist? Like
okay.
sometimes I see a lot of student projects and I just ask like why does this need to exist? Like what is the
Got it.
reasoning
You
behind a lot of
you
this?
wanted to like find the question or the answer to the question of its existence, maybe. And I
Exactly.
believe that might have been the philosophy that you used in all of your projects.
Exactly. Like is
There
it
was
truly
even,
solving a problem? Like is it truly making anything in anyone's life better? Like is it solving anything? Because sometimes there's like
because I
just
believe
projects
that
for the sake of projects.
most of the cars that currently exist into the market, they are just, they're good for the public use, but if you find specific type of people where they are trying to buy a car not because it goes from point A to point B, because they want to know how it feels to drive it on a straight road or drive it along the coast. So yeah, I believe that you had the philosophy to find a reason as to why the particular design or particular model of the car should exist. And I find it to be quite interesting. And I believe that you're still using that philosophy into your workplaces at Viscom and stuff as to why
Yeah, totally.
Viscom should exist. That's a good thing. I really liked about you that. And the other thing, well, you must have had a lot of friends when you were in college because,
Yeah.
and sorry, and like, how was your college experience? Because I just started to use college, and let me tell you, I've been dropped with a huge workload. I've got a lot of sketches
Oh
to do, a lot
yeah.
of shapes, a lot of products. So how did you got through it?
Yeah, no, totally, totally. There's so much work. Yeah, like especially first and second year, if you're coming from like a normal high school or something, like it's like a very shocking, like, whoa, there's like so much work you have to do. And
Yeah.
I just like I feel like a lot of it is truly in the mindset, like how you approach it. Like you have to really have the mindset of like, oh wow, I get to do this versus like, oh, I have to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like it has to feel like something you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, because it's just so much stuff you have to do that you just gotta like really almost like feel lucky that you get to do it because it's like really fun stuff. Like the work is actually really fun, at least for me. Like I thought it
Oh
was
yeah, I
actually really,
enjoyed it.
yeah, it's actually really fun work. But as far as what I would do, I would we would have classes maybe like 6 hours every day, like 4 to 6 hours every
Ah,
single day. It was
damn.
like I had classes like in the morning or in the evening, and then I was taking 21 credits or like 18 or 21, like a lot of credit because it was the same price from 15 to 21. And then essentially, you have VizCom, your studio class, and then you just like kind of find a group of people. Like I feel like in transportation design, like they don't talk to any other like majors. You only talk to other like car designer students. So like
Yeah.
you kind of create this. You guys create this kind of like this like productive group of people, and then you guys all like if you see your friend working, you're like, oh, I have to be working, and it kind of creates this culture of like, oh, I don't want to be the last person to leave the like computer studio or something like, and it just becomes like if you kind of really involve yourself in the culture of like the car design culture in school, it's like a friendly competition, and then I feel like that just naturally drove me personally to like keep wanting to be better because it's just like fun competing with your friends.
Yeah, sometimes it could be fun because I believe that competition always leads to, betterment of your results. You compete with
Hmm.
another, with each another in friendly way, and you get better results every time. And there's one thing that I think we have always heard of is you can always sketch better. You can always make, your results better. So you just have
Yeah,
to decide at one point that you think it's good enough to impress the teacher or good enough for myself to satisfy me and everyone's needs.
exactly.
Now, as you said that in first second year of design of being a design student, you get a lot of workload. So one thing that makes me nervous, and I think it might have made you nervous and all the other students, is how it would affect the personal life. Now, since you've already graduated, I think you might have had a bit of an experience. So, how does your day-to-day life, your schedule gets changed? you get time for doing all of your hobbies, you know, accomplishing some things that are totally different from being, you know, related to, even remotely related to design? How does it get
Yeah.
affected?
You mean right now or while you're in
No, when you
school?
were a student.
Yeah, when I was a student, yeah. So yeah, it's you because it's only for 6 months of the year, like 4 to 6 months. So it's like, and then you go home during the summer, but you still should sketch. But yeah, you really lose. You have to like really subscribe to it. Like you have to like it becomes your lifestyle. It has to be more than just like a job thing, and like you have to really treat it like it's a lifestyle because the best students are doing that. Like the people that if you want to actually be good, like this is if for people that want to like actually be car designers. I feel like it truly does become like a part of your like lifestyle. So you have to like kind of definitely sacrifice some things. Like I used to play a lot of video games in high school and like pre CCS, but like I just couldn't play nearly as many video games, let's say, uh, while in school because it's just like to be good at car design, and just like there's so much time that needs to be put into it to be like at a
Yeah.
certain tier that I was willing to like just give up certain like hobbies and things that I enjoyed in my personal life because I just wanted to be so good, or like I just like wanted to like I felt like I like was had so much stuff to still learn. So that's what kind of like how it affected my, I guess, like personal life. So like for example, yeah, like I only talked, yeah, I had like a really small, I guess you create like social, you still have like a social life, but it's just only within that space, like car design and stuff. um yeah.
Um, all right. So, yeah, I think you had a great college life. You must
Hmm.
have been a really busy person. And
Yeah, it was crazy.
so once you graduated, did you had any, you know, some kind of feeling where you felt that, yeah, I'm finally now a designer. I'm not a student anymore. Did you have that kind of feeling?
Oh, totally. Yeah, like definitely like the first week of work or like the first 2 weeks, and you're like actually there, and you're like, whoa, I'm like in here. Yeah, that was pretty wild. I was like, whoa, okay, like because you're just so used to like being a student trying to be a designer, and then like
Yeah, yeah.
next thing you know, it's like you're a
You are
designer,
a
quote
designer.
unquote, and then it's like, yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, like here we go. Like so that was pretty
But
cool.
I believe that the changes to the workload that you had, it might not have been that much. I think it was a bit of the
Almost the
same.
same. Yeah, pretty much the same amount of workload. um yeah, I struggled at the beginning to like hit the fidelity with also the amount of time you had, versus in school you have so much time to get like a pretty high fidelity thing. So in like the
Absolutely.
professional sense, you have to hit like a high fidelity rendering and in a short amount of time. So it's like that part I was struggling, which is why I was like, okay, VizCom needs to exist.
So you have been working on Viscom since college, or was it after you graduated something that you were doing as a hobby or just to pass the time?
Yeah, so no, designer's pen was actually the first thing. So designer's
Oh,
pen was like this. So I started designer's pen, and that was like a little like community page on Instagram. I don't know if you do you know designer's pen.
yes, I believe I went to the website, but there wasn't really any info on it.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
only
but do you know
thing
like
that,
the Instagram page? Does like
yeah, I've been
okay,
there.
but
You
anyways,
had some posts regarding the different designs through the industry, I think.
yeah, yeah.
And
So anyways, yeah. So it
it was,
originally started. So I originally started that like designer's pen, and then at first you could just like it was like something where you could just generate these like cars, like you just generate like random cars and then like save them and then Photoshop over them and stuff like that. And that was kind of like the first version of VizCom. But then I just made it its own thing called VizCom because designer's pen was something totally different. And
mhm.
then yeah, and that's when it. So that was like almost like a year and a half ago now. Yeah, like almost like a year and a half ish ago.
So the designer spin was also powered by the same type of artificial intelligence as Viscom is powered to.
Now it's a lot different, um, but it was using machine learning.
Okay, great. And before you started working, full time at Viscom, I believe you had jobs at Honda and Nvidia, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was in NVIDIA. Yeah,
So what was your exact role at Honda? Like, were you a junior designer, or you were focusing on
yeah,
certain
like
aspect of design pipeline?
juniors, super junior, um, interior design, like production, and then I went to advanced design. So it was like half interior, half advanced design. That was super fun.
And before working at Honda, did you had any internships of any kind?
Yeah, I interned at Honda actually, the same studio that I
Okay,
ended up working at.
right, great. And after Honda, I believe you left to Nvidia, where you might have got excited about machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was very monumental. Um, yeah. So after Honda, I went to NVIDIA in Silicon Valley.
All right. So I think you had a really great journey. After being a junior designer at Honda, and now you're the CEO and founder of Viscom.
Yeah,
Do you
no, yeah.
feel
It's been
any kind of difference in the workload that you had at Honda versus here at Viscom?
yeah, yeah. It's like yeah, very very different. Uh, yeah, there's way more work. Yeah, way more work. Um, it's just yeah, very different. Like the actual workload, there's just like a lot more. Um, but it's just so much more fun that it doesn't really feel like it per se. But there truly is a lot more work. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that brings us to the topic of Viscom. So let's talk about it. And the first thing I want to say is how Viscom exactly started. How is the development of Viscom? Where and what made you think that something like Viscom should exist in the first place? What was your reason as to why you believe it should exist?
Yeah, totally, totally. So I just so like when we do like VizCom, so the name comes from like the VizCom class that you take like in school. Like that's where I got the name VizCom from, and that class is all about just coloring, shading, and rendering your drawings. Like you spend like 5 or 4 years trying to learn how to like visualize a line drawing, like where the lighting goes and the shadows. And I always felt like similar to how we can just take photos of things instead of having to paint everything. It's like
Yeah.
why do we have to manually do that for our ideas? Like why do we have to manually visualize our ideas? So while working at NVIDIA, I was working on this is when StyleGAN 2 came out. This was an architecture, a really popular architecture for generating cars or generating like images. So I kind of just like saw this opportunity where we're wasting a lot of time coloring and shading and rendering in the art world and the art and design world. Like that part of the creative process is something that's relatively manual and it's pretty objective. There's no subjectivity of how something should be colored or rendered if you're trying to get an accurate understanding of it. So yeah, so we just kind of did that for like a few months, and that's kind of how that started. Though, was just spotting that problem that existed within my workflow, which was okay. How do I shorten the distance between having an idea and actually bringing it to life? And the first step to do that was figuring out how to color, shade, and render people's drawings for them.
Right. And I believe this is still the reason as to why Viscom exists, because I've been using it for a few months and it has been improving lately again and again. And I believe the main tool that Viscom provides is sketch to render, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So walk me through it. When Viscom was founded, were you alone, like, or you had a team of many people, many significantly smart people, and what were their roles as well?
Yeah, so let's see. So me and my co-founder Kalen, who I've known since like elementary school, and so he is the co-founder as well, CTO. He does a lot of the technical stuff. Our first hire was Velco. Velco was one of the first engineers at another pretty big startup, and then Matthew, who does a lot of the machine learning research and feature engineering, and is like always on top of like the bleeding edge of like what's happening in the AI world. So that was like kind of the first four like core members of the team. Um, and yeah, so do you want me to tell you about like what the first like what that was like,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
that whole experience, like how deep?
What was
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
experience starting this
Um,
company?
Yeah, so the first 6 months it was just me and Kalen, my co-founder, and we didn't really have any like let's say like money necessarily. Like we had money to like survive, but we had no understanding of like how VizCom was going to make money. We were just trying to like build something really, really cool. And we both just quit our jobs. So I quit NVIDIA in like last year ish ago. Like yeah, last year, and so did he quit his job as well. And then he moved out here in Silicon Valley with me to just build this out in Mountain View. And so then we had like no really like clue of like, oh my God, like, okay, like we'll figure out a way to like, it'll just work itself out. I just had like a lot of conviction in the technology. Um, so yeah, no money, just like figuring things out. And then that's when we got a email from an investor that was looking to invest in like creative tools. Um, so we then raised money from investors to further carry out the mission and hire 2 people. And then so now then we started doing that more, hiring more people, and then we just did like a recent like other fundraise of some more money. So then we hired like more people. So this kind of went from just like me and Kalen to then just like this team of people building things, and just kind of everyone that's on board of like the mission that we're all about. So that's kind of how that started, and now it's been about like a year and a half. And between that phase of me and Kalen until now, um, yeah, the team has grown and we've like raised more money to pursue the mission and stuff. So yeah, it's been pretty fun. Very suspenseful at sometimes. Like I was like, oh God, like it's very like a because there's no like you're just like figuring it out as you go. It's like a really long student project, a really long project is what it feels
Yeah, I
like.
believe it was really fun for you as well. You might have been
Hmm.
extremely busy, extremely on top of things, so that you make sure to, everything doesn't fall apart. And yeah, so far it's
Yeah.
been going really good. I particularly enjoy the Lego challenge that VIZCom really recently introduced. I've tried it a
Hmm.
couple of times, working like magic. Absolutely brilliant. It has been
Yeah.
really good. It's off
Thank
to
you.
you. Now, most of our audience, they are really tended towards, sketching first. So they really like sketching supercars and fast cars, and mostly just cars, I would say. So the
Hmm.
tool that Viscom provides is Sketch to Render, and if you could help our audience understand that why do you think that Sketch to Render would be a big part of the design pipeline that they might have to go through. So what is the real reason that they should be using Sketch to Render?
Yeah, totally. So it's sketch to render. Think about it. So right now, in order to get a render, you have to have a sketch. Then you have to go into Photoshop, path it out, and like know the values and how to actually make it look nice by hand. But with sketch to render, it allows you to spend more time to focus on the design and what looks nice versus getting into the manual technical things about how to actually render the object. So it allows you to explore more ideas in a shorter time period versus how long it would take you to explore that amount of ideas if you were to render each drawing by hand. So you can do like one drawing and then get like 50 ideas just from one really simple drawing without having to render out 50 different renders by hand. So it's just one way to really kind of like explore your ideas and prototype a lot faster and quicker, and then just without having to really jeopardize your ideas. Because even when I was in school, there was always students who were great designers, had a lot of really good ideas, but they were just not really good at Photoshop. Like they couldn't just understand like how to actually render the ideas, but they're good
Yeah,
designers. They just can't like actually render them. So this kind of like lowers the barrier of entry of like people that just want to like get their ideas out into feasible renders, like good idea, so you can actually like see them.
nice. And I believe this should also help them in managing their time while working on projects, because I think it really take a lot of time to turn a sketch into a render manually. You have to figure out the colors, the shades, the reflections, and if you went wrong, you have to start all over again. So sketch to
Yeah,
render, you just change the values and the input, and it would give you different result every single time. Yeah,
exactly.
I've tried it in a couple of sketches that I uploaded on my portfolio. It is so quick. I cannot even say like in seconds you could get the result. It
Yeah,
has been working really good.
yeah,
And so Wiscom, as you stated, is currently still a startup, right?
yeah.
So how does it plan to go mainstream? And what is the plan of Wiscom to grow in the next few years? Like, how are you planning to lead the company so that major other automotive brands or any other brand along various different design industry could use it?
Totally, totally. Um, yeah. So I think as long as we keep building for the designer, we're always going to be in the right corner. One way we're thinking about doing that is, adding features and kind of making sure the experience speaks to the existing workflow. Because, with a lot of these new different AI tools, they're kind of introducing random ways of how to create versus being considerate of how artists and designers already create things. So as long as we keep expanding on that, so for example, going from a 2D drawing to a 3D object, that's just something inherently that a lot of artists and designers want is they want their drawings to be OBJ files, like 3D objects. So that's like one way that we're headed. And another way is just adding like more multiplayer team features, because in the end, a car design is a team effort.
Absolutely, yeah.
So design and creative processes are team efforts in general. So kind of designing a lot of features and adding a lot of experiences that speak to those problems is kind of one way that we're going to just continuously grow and make sure that throughout that process we're kind of implementing AI in the places where it makes the most sense for the user.
It seemed more sensible, yeah, because in any company you work, you're not going to be alone. You're going to be a part of a group that is working on a particular model or a particular edition of a car. And it's just a group work. It's always group work or teamwork that leads to a car. Even if you're
Exactly.
working in projects in school, I believe that you also have to work in groups to submit the final model or final presentation. So, yeah,
Yep.
it sounds great. And other thing is, now, as you said, that Viscom is, getting more investors and thus leading to hire people. In the future, is it gonna have, multiple headquarters or multiple states along the globe? Because car market right now is divided into three spaces, and it's American car market, it's European, and there's Asian. So, do you believe that you'll be heading into European and maybe Indian or Japanese market very soon enough?
Definitely. I don't know if I'll physically will be there, but definitely, yeah, we're like working and talking with car companies outside of the US for sure.
That's great because I believe that most of the cars that are produced for public are mostly the same kind of cars. They are either SUVs or sedans or hatchbacks, and they need to be updated
Yep,
every year. They need to be up to date with all the trends and technologies that are going in the automotive industry. And something like
exactly.
Viscom or the sketch to render feature could help them ease up the process and reduce the time required to design an entirely new car from scratch. So yeah, hoping to
Exactly.
see the name of Viscom in many other brands. I hope that it goes as soon as possible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, totally, totally. Same.
And now, as I in the beginning I said that this interview is really going to be important for students because you have been a designer yourself. You have lived the life of how it feels to be a design student,
Oh
and
yeah.
just a few other things that I wanted to know. Now, design students all over the world, when they're in college, they always try to make sure that they get an internship soon enough so that they can be recognized in it throughout the industry. They can show their work. They can have a reputation. I wanted to know, is Viscom in the future having like maybe some kind of plans or thoughts that could help design students, particularly who are in college? Do you have any workshops planned or something in mind you
Yeah.
want?
No. No. Actually, yeah. No. So right now, we just kicked off this kind of like education program where students can essentially sign up and they'll get paid for this to essentially learn and teach VizCom. So it's like you basically go through this program where you'll learn how to use VizCom in a way, and then you'll get connections throughout. Since we talk to a lot of car companies and give a lot of demos and
Mhm.
showcase our tools a lot, you'll basically help us create content for different car companies, for our different social channels. And I can give you the link for this later, but essentially that's like one way that we're thinking about how we can actually incorporate ourselves into the education space for students, let's say like that don't get internships right away in the summer because you're like a freshman or something like that. You can
Absolutely, yeah.
just take this like VizCom education program, still get exposure to the industry, and be a part of like bleeding edge technology that's going to be implemented into the industry. So that's like one way that we're doing that students can be a part of.
It sounds great. Yeah, I think it's going to really help them, to kick off their journey and give them a little advantage because
Totally.
I believe that artificial intelligence and machine learning being used in the design industry have a great future ahead of it.
Yep.
Because we have seen a lot of industry use this to easen up the process, and for a long time, design has been the only industry that haven't really used it as much as it should have. And I think Wiscom has introduced it in a really great way. Yeah, I'm hoping to see this being a course in the college so that students can be taught
Yeah.
Viscom or machine
Soon.
learning being used in design.
Soon. Yeah. Very soon. I hope to be able to introduce this to professors and students, and yeah. So we're looking forward to that.
And when you were in college, did you ever had a thought at that time that artificial intelligence or machine learning could be used in design in today's day?
Um. No. Not really. No.
Okay, well, yeah, it's been working out great.
Yeah.
and
I was not thinking about this.
and another thing is, now, whenever a student graduates with a design degree, they always want to, be a junior designer or senior designer, or and work at a company for designing a car, really new car, maybe some kind. Sometimes it's McLaren or BMW or Honda or anything. What
Yeah.
so? I wanted to know what kind of job opportunities will Viscom create for design students, especially from the transportation design.
Hmm. Very interesting. It really is going to depend on how fast the industry adapts to technology, but you're going to see new job roles come out of the tool. So, for example, like a CAD modeler didn't exist 40 years ago because CAD wasn't a thing. So
Yeah.
there's going to be like people that are like have these particular job roles that are in line with AI creative tools. So like someone that's like a data set curator, like who's like really good at curating data sets to get certain results. That might be part of like the job role because the technology allows you to do that in order for them to get results the fastest, let's say. So some of these haven't been flushed out 100% yet, but I think as of right now, using it to kind of further enhance your renderings and get ideas out faster, if you can like master that right now, if you're like a freshman or sophomore and you like adopt these tools right now, you'll be so far ahead of like anyone who like didn't like adopt these tools. Like you'll just be able to produce things that are just like out of this world. Like it's going to be like much better and faster. Um, yeah,
Okay, because I believe that whenever a design student works on a project, most of the time goes into just expressing their ideas into the piece of paper, and they spend a lot of their time doing sketching and rendering and all of that stuff. And I think it goes
yeah,
same for all the companies where they work on the project. So if Viscom is get highly collaborative and gets highly indulged to these companies, they might have to you know start hiring people with new job positions where they would be able to use Viscom as a software very smoothly and would
exactly.
allow to have great renders on time. Yeah, I could see that
Mm,
happening definitely.
yep, yep,
And now I think that you might be familiar with history of design because when the industrial revolution was introduced or came into existence, I think the word design really got its meaning because before that all the cars used to look same, and after industrial revolution jobs was created,
yep,
companies were formed, and different type of companies show different design strategies and philosophies. And when industrial design or industrial design got mixed with art, let's say in Europe or in US, beautiful cars came into existence in the era of 60s and the 70s. You could see Cadillac going on at Ford. We were seeing Ferrari,
yep.
Lamborghini, and Mercedes. All were producing beautiful cars. And it was all because of mixing art along with industrial design to create cars. So I
Yeah.
wanted to ask, do you think introducing artificial intelligence or machine learning would change the impact of how we are creating cars similar to what art did in 60s and 70s?
Mm, yeah. Like, will it have impact on the type of like the styling itself? Like,
Yeah,
the actual look of the cars? Mm,
look, maybe
not
the
really. I don't.
emotion.
I think. I think if anything, it's going to be more so centered around the creator itself than the medium, because now what the medium is doing is just magnifying your own thoughts, because now you can just take your own thoughts and amplify them at a magnitude that hasn't been possible before. So
Mhm.
it's gonna allow people to express their own ideas more. So I feel like it's gonna be kind of hard to say if it's gonna be like this blanket trend of like a trend across all things, but I think you're gonna see a lot more like individual expression because of this ability to express your ideas so like frequently and fast at like a super high fidelity all the time, that people are going to be able to now just like really express themselves. There's no longer going to be this like barrier of like, oh, just because I can like color and render my cars the best, that this is the trend. It's since everyone can do that now, it's going to be really more so about like the ideas, and I think that comes down to the individual. So yeah, I don't think there will be like this like, oh, everything will be organic now because we're using AI. Like I don't think that's gonna maybe be a thing though.
All right. Well, I hope that it does some kind of magic to the world where artificial intelligence could really be used because
Mm,
involving the touch of highly advanced and very fast working machine learning to the physical touch and the emotional touch of human side when it comes to design, it would really speed up the
yeah,
process and would still give us very sensible and very lovable designs, I would say.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it.
Okay. And one last thing I wanted to ask is, you have introduced artificial intelligence into the world of design at a very young age, I want to say,
Mhm.
because every time, so someone want to get known or reputed in the industry, they must have had a lot of experience, a lot of skills. But you're still at a very young age. You graduated out of college and you had two jobs, and you started Viscom a year, maybe year and a half ago. So I
Hmm.
wanted to ask, do you think is there any possibility where artificial intelligence could be used in any alternate way than how you're making it go into the world of design?
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting applications that I've seen. Um, People using it to write essays for school. Um, uh, I've seen it be used for um, like Apple uses it in the Apple Watch. Like it'll like tell you when to stand up and things like that. That's like a form of
Yeah,
machine learning. It'll tell you when to like drink water. So like as far as like this future of like artificial general intelligence, I think is going to head towards this realm of like the ultimate recommendation system, to where it's a recommendation system over your life. So like your whole life, it's like, oh, wake up here, okay, now eat this at this time, okay, you should do these things at this time. And like you don't have to really think about what you need to do every day, because the AI is kind of like, it already knows what's the best way for you to live. So like that's like a realm I see this kind of all heading at, like a what a Google or a Microsoft or an Apple might do.
well, do you watch a lot of F1? Because how you just described AI is very similar to what you called a racing line in F1. So when you're racing along the circuit in Formula One or basically any kind of motorsport racing, there's a thing
Mhm.
called as racing line, which is a predictable line that if you stick to it, you should be able to win the race. But most of the time, what happens is drivers they try to stick to it, and the recommendation sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. So I believe AI will have the same general usage in the future. It will try to recommend you, and it would tell you what is the best thing that you should do today, at what time, how you should do it, and why you should do it. So yeah,
Exactly.
it would be kind of like a mental helper for any human being.
Exactly. Like this could cure ADHD or something. I don't know.
Hopefully, yeah. And well, yeah, I think that's about it. That's all I wanted to talk to you about. Just from your college life, how you were like a student. And before we end this interview, I wanted you to give some tips to the some of your audience who are students or who trying to be
Hmm.
student, as to why. Give me them one more reason as to why they should be designers.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just design thinking, like the kind of thinking you learn through design, not even just like drawing and all that kind of stuff, but just like the actual design thinking part, is the most diverse skill set that you'll learn, that's so applicable to anything. Like you don't have to just learn how to design. You can learn how to design cars, but then if you can design a car, you can design anything. Like you can design like some kind of like ride sharing app, or you can design like some kind of like community architecture. Like you can do anything, because it's like those core principles you learn from design are something that's pretty special and not as common as you think. I think one misconception that design students get, that is like when they're in school, they feel like, oh man, everyone can do this. But as soon as you get out of that like world of like those 10 designers, like your way of thinking is actually pretty rare. So, and you can apply it in areas where it's less common, and that's where you create the most value. Because if you can apply design thinking in places where it's less seen, it's like there's a lot of low hanging fruits as far as improvements that you can make in those areas that just like can really set you apart from everyone else. So that's kind of like one thing I think that I got the most value out of all that.
All right. Well, I hope our audiences they might have learned something, because yeah, design thinking is something that is really valued, and I believe that everyone has their own unique way of design and their philosophy to learn new skills and develop it. And for you, it must have been really great because well, right now you're the CEO and founder of Viscom, It's a very good machine learning. It's been working fantastically, and I believe it will get better, really better over time. I hope to see it in
Hmm.
future to be used in in a very more sensible way where every company will start to use it basically. And this would be a
Yeah,
really great role of machine learning in the field of design.
definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing is we want to make sure everyone is aware of is that we're here to accelerate the creative workflow, not replace it. Like some AI tools are here to kind of like almost replace and automate the designer, which is not our intent at all. Our intent is
Okay.
very much to provide a tool that unlocks the creative potential for artists and designers. So that's kind of where we stand. So yeah, thanks for having me on this interview and stuff. This is super fun.
Well, I hope you had a great time today with me,
Yeah, no,
and
so cool.
I want to wish you good luck for your future endeavors. I also good luck to Viscom for all of its future potentials. Thank you
Yeah,
for spending some time with me and chatting with me about Viscom and your college life. And I hope you had a great day today.
awesome. Yeah, no, this was so fun.